So welcome to the Karyotype Lecture. Before we get into what karyotypes are, we're going to review what mutations are. Right? A mutation is a sudden genetic change. It can either be harmful, beneficial, or neutral. Harmful mutations end up in like genetic disorders, cancer, or death. Beneficial mutations can allow the organism to better survive, like adapt to their environment. And then neutral mutations neither are harmful nor helpful to an organism. Only mutations that occur physically in the sex cells or gametes are then passed from parent to offspring. So we remember from our last Unit 4 that if the mutation happens in our body cells, then it's not going to be passed into our offspring. But if the mutation occurs in our sex cells, then it can be passed to our offspring. We talked about different types of mutations, right? Gene or point mutations, right, the most common and they're least drastic, and there's typically only one gene that's being altered. And the second time we vaguely talked about was a chromosomal mutation. These are less common or more drastic because it affects the entire chromosome. Because the chromosomes come of hundreds of genes and thousands of genes on an individual chromosome, and if you end up with an entire mutation of a chromosome, it's going to be affecting those genes in that organism. So it's affecting many genes, and it's caused by non-disjunction. If you remember from our lecture on meiosis, that's the failure of the chromosomes to separate during meiosis properly. So if you see here, you have 4 chromosomes right here, and then during anaphase 1, you ended up pulling 3 on one side and only 1 on the other. So then when it goes to the second division, you end up with the incorrect amount of DNA or chromosomes in your gametes. So the mutation will cause a physical either not enough chromosomes or it'll have too much chromosomes. So you end up with not enough genes or too many genes. So karyotypes is a visual appearance of chromosomes in the nuclei of an organism. So we know that humans have 46 chromosomes, and those chromosomes are pairs from our parents. You get 23 from your mom and 23 from your dad, making a total of 46. 22 pairs of those chromosomes are what we call homologous. They look alike, and these are called autosomes, and these are determining your body traits. Okay, so 22 out of those 23 are homologous. They look alike. The last pair is the sex chromosomes, and this is what determines the sex in an individual, whether you're male or female. And this is the last set of chromosomes that we're going to look at. So females will have 2 X chromosomes. These are sex chromosomes that are homologous, while males have an X and a Y chromosome, and these are sex chromosomes that are physically different. So this is what a karyotype looks like. It's just a visual picture of those chromosomes. They've taken them and they've placed them next to their homologous pair, and they've sorted them based on the genes that they end up having. So this is the first chromosome. You end up with 1 from mom and 1 from dad. There's your second chromosome, 1 from mom and 1 from dad. And so you have 22 sets of those that are identical in the sense, they're not identical, they code for the same genes, so they look alike. But the genes from your mom is obviously going to be different from your dad. Now this last set of chromosomes, if you're female, it's XX, so you have full 2 X's here for those sex chromosomes, and that's what makes a female organism, is this last pair here. So this karyotype would be of a female, while this karyotype would be of a male. As you can see here, the Y chromosome is much smaller. If you look a lot closer, it actually ends up with a Y shape if formatted correctly, and then it has an X. So you're going to inherit 1 from your mom, 1 from your dad. That dad will give you that Y chromosome, while your dad would give you this X chromosome. So when looking at these karyotypes, if you end up with 2 chromosomes that are not alike here on the 23rd pair, the XY, it makes a male, and the XX makes a female. So what can you tell from this karyotype? The thing when you're looking at each karyotype, you're going to look to make sure they all have their sets, right? So you want to make sure that all the chromosomes are exactly alike, 1 through 23 in a normal organism, right? In a normal human. So these are the same, these are the same, these are the same. They code for the same traits. They're not identical, but they code for the same traits. Okay? But then you notice in this organism, they have more than 23 sets of chromosomes. And so this is an organism that actually has 31 sets of organisms, so it must not be human. There should be another organism that has a total of 31 sets. But then you can also see that this organism is designated as female because you end up with 2 X chromosomes. Now let's look at this one. So once again, we're going to count through, make sure that there's 2 in each one. Now these would still be considered identical just because it's curled up. It still has the homologous pair. It's still the same genes. There's nothing wrong with that chromosome. We're going through and making sure there's 2 in each, which we're good here until we hit 21. And now we see 3 chromosomes in the 21st chromosome, which is trisomy 21. And so this organism would end up with Down syndrome because they have 3 21st chromosomes. And then you'd also notice that this organism is female because it has 2 X chromosomes and no Y. So, when you're working on this karyotype packet, I just want to remind you, you don't know what other people are going through or who they're close to are going through, what type of disorders that they have, if they have any chromosomal disorders. So I just want to make sure that you guys are respectful to one another about when talking about these chromosomes and the diagnoses that people have that they cannot control. And I just want to make sure that you're respectful during this unit and that you're not going to be joking about any disorders that someone could have. Okay, so from here, you're going to end up getting an article that has different genetic disorders based on chromosomal disorders, and it'll talk about how they get those disorders and what causes them. And then you're going to end up completing an activity that goes along with that article.